welcome to Simpler Bible, a daily journey to biblical understanding. Episode 68 today, we're jumping away from Judges just for one day into the book of Ruth. And here's why. The opening line says, "In the day when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land." The book of Ruth is occurring within the time frame of the book of Judges. And I kind of picked this place arbitrarily in the book of Judges. I think that it could have come a little bit later, but the stories we're about to see in the book of Judges actually come towards the very end of that 350-year period, as I'll show you. So I think this is probably a good place for the book of Ruth in terms of the book of Judges after the reign of Gideon. It's also because there's a famine in the land and the people are sojourning in the land of Moab. So there's kind of this connection to Moab. Anyway, here we go. Ruth chapter 1, verse 1. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife, along with their 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. These took Moabite wives. The name of one was Orpah, and the name of the other was Ruth. They lived there about 10 years. And both Mahlon and Chilion died, so that the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband. And then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the land of the country of Moab, for she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on their way to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each of you to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with me and with the dead. And the Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband." And she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, "No, we will return with you. We will return to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Do I have yet sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. And if I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night, should he bear sons for you? Would you therefore wait until they were grown? Would you therefore refrain again from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is an exceedingly bitter thing for me, for your sake, that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me." So they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her, and she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." Notice that. Her sister-in-law, the other sister, returned to her gods. Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you, for where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God," because these are the Moabite women. "Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." When Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. So the 2 of them went on until they came back to Bethlehem. And so this is key. Ruth, they're coming to Bethlehem. That's where they're going to live, right? That's key for later. Hopefully I'll remember to tell you why. And when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" She said, "Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara." Mara means bitter. "For the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her, who returned from the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. Now, chapter 2, keep rolling with me. Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean along with the ears of grain with him in whose sight I shall find favor." And she said, "Go, my daughter." So these 2 women, a widow and, both widows, a widow and her widow daughter-in-law, her daughter-in-law says, "Look, I'm young. Let me go." And at this time of the year when they were gleaning and they were harvesting all the grain, widows could come in to the field, and any of the grain that kind of fell to the ground that didn't make it into the bundle could be picked up by the widows. This was according to the law. This is according to the law of Moses. Don't glean your field to the very edges. If something drops to the ground, don't pick it up. Leave it for the widow. Leave it for the orphan. Leave it for the stranger among you. So that's according to the law. That's what's happening here. And Boaz is allowing that to happen in his field. So Ruth says, "Let me go find a field to glean in so that we can have some food." And by God's good grace, not by luck or coincidence, she ends up in the field of Boaz, who is a close relative of her former father-in-law. So she went out and she gleaned in the field. This is 2:3 of the reapers. And she happened to come to the part of the field that belongs to Boaz, who is of the clan of Elimelech. Behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they said, "The Lord bless you." Boaz said, "Who," to his young men who was in charge of the reapers, "whose young woman is this?" And the servant who was in charge of the reapers said, "She is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab." And so the Moabites, by the way, if you're wondering where they came from, Genesis 19:37 tells us the older daughter of Lot, after Sodom and Gomorrah, got her father drunk and slept with her father and had a son named Moab, who became the Moabites. And because of their origin, they weren't allowed to even be around the tabernacle of the Lord or the temple of the Lord for 10 generations. So the servant's answering Boaz, saying, "This is the daughter-in-law of Naomi who came back from Moab." Chapter 2, verse 7 says, "She said, 'Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves of the reapers.' So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest." Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter, do not glean in another field, and do not leave this one, but keep close to my young women." In other words, you're welcome to glean here throughout this whole harvest season. Keep gleaning in my field. Come and be part of my field. Because he's a close relative with Naomi's husband who has passed away. And so he says, "Look, we'll take care of you. Come and glean in my field." And he says this to her. He says, "Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn." Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your sight that you should take notice of me? I'm a foreigner." But Boaz answered, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been told me, and how you left your father and your mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Keep that in mind. Then she said, "I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants." And at mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel into the wine." So she sat beside the rest of the reapers, and he passed to her roasted grain, and she ate until she was satisfied, and she even had some left over. When she rose to glean, Boaz instructed the young men, saying, "Let her glean even among the sheaves, and don't rebuke her for it. Also pull out some of the from the bundles for her and leave it for her to glean, and don't rebuke her." So Boaz is so intent upon taking care of this daughter-in-law of Naomi that even in the bundles of the sheaves, he says to his servants, like, "Look, pull a few out that we've already bundled, pull a few out, throw them on the ground for her, and like put some there so that she can just get some, and she has plenty," right? So she gleaned into the field until evening, and then she beat out the wheat that she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. And she took it and went into the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She brought out and gave her food and what she had left over from what she had left over after being satisfied. And the mother-in-law said, "Where did you glean today? In whose field?" And she said, "In the field of Boaz." And Naomi says, "Oh, may he be blessed of the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead. This man is a close relative of ours. He is one of our redeemers." That's very key. And Ruth, the Moabite, said, "Besides, he said to me, 'Keep close to my young men until they have finished all the harvest.'" And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It's good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted." So she kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the harvest, and she lived there with her mother-in-law. Now, at the end of the harvest season, Naomi says, "Look, we got to get you married. It's right that we get you married. Shouldn't I seek rest for you, that it would go well for you?" So between chapter 2 and chapter 3, we've had the rest of the harvest of the wheat and the barley seasons. And here's what she says to her. She goes, "Look, Boaz and all of his men are at the threshing floor tonight. I want you to go tonight to the threshing floor. I want you to lay down by his feet. See where he is. Uncover his feet and lay down next to his feet. And then when he wakes up, you tell him, 'Hey, look, spread your wings over me.' He'll tell you what to do." So this is very intimate. And so all the men have been threshing on the threshing floor. They're exhausted. She goes to Boaz. She finds him there. She uncovers his feet. He wakes up. He stirs in the middle of the night and he says, "Who are you?" So let's pick up really quickly. Naomi's instruction says, "Go and lay down by his feet and he'll tell you what to do." So it says in verse 7 of chapter 3, "When Boaz had eaten and drunk and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. And then she, Ruth, came softly and uncovered his feet and lay down. At midnight, the man was startled and turned over and noticed a woman laying at his feet. He says, 'Who are you?' She said, 'I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer.'" Okay, a couple of things. Notice back up here. The Lord repay you. Boaz said, "The Lord repay you for what you have done. Under whose wings you have come to take refuge." You have come to take refuge under the wings of God. And then she says down here, "Spread your wings over your servant, spread your blanket over your servant, for you are a redeemer." In other words, what she's proposing to him is marriage. She's saying, redeem me as part of your close family member. Now, we'll get into that in just a moment. So he says, blessed be you, daughter of all women. You didn't go after younger men. You didn't go after rich men or poor men. He said, you've shown me a kindness. It is true that I'm a redeemer, he says, but there's a redeemer who's closer than me. In other words, he has the first right to you as a wife. If you're confused by that, it's all the way back in the book of, where is it? Deuteronomy. And in the book of Deuteronomy, what we see there is if a man is married to a woman and the man dies, the brother has to marry that woman, and the first son that they have together will carry the dead brother's name, so that his line won't die out in Israel. And so he was the redeemer. And so the father-in-law Elimelech, he didn't have a brother apparently, but it goes, if there's no brother to marry the wife, then the next closest kinsman marries the widow and gives her a son so that the brother's name can continue. So Boaz says, look, it's true that I'm a redeemer, but there's one guy who is before me, who's closer to Elimelech's line than me. So we have to give him the right of redemption first. And so he gives her a whole bunch of grain and he sends her back to Naomi. And Mara says, look, we're not going to rest. Boaz is not going to rest until this matter is settled. And I want you to jump down to chapter 4. So this is where they would do business. They're sitting in the city gate, and it says Boaz had gone up to the gate and sat down there, and behold, the Redeemer of whom Boaz had spoken came by. Boaz said, turn aside, friend, sit down here. And he turned aside and he sat down. And Boaz took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, sit down here, and they also sat down. And he said to the Redeemer, Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. I thought I'd tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of those who are sitting here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you'll redeem it, but if not, tell me so that I can know, because there is no one besides you to redeem it, and then I'm next after you. And the man said, I'll redeem it. So Boaz is sly. He goes, hey, look, there's a piece of land that Elimelech had, and somebody needs to take care of it. You're the closer kinsman. Do you want to buy it? If you don't want to buy it, I'll buy it, but you're ahead of me, so you get first right. And the guy goes, yeah, I'll take that piece of land. So Boaz says this in verse 5, the day you buy the land from the hand of Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate, my mouth did not want to say that, perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance. The Redeemer said, I can't redeem it, lest I impair my own inheritance. Remember, if you marry the widow of one of your kinsmen, her first son carries the name of the dead father, and that inheritance passes to him. And so this guy goes, I can't take that field and take the Ruth the Moabitess, because then I impair my inheritance. Boaz doesn't seem to have any other sons. And so Boaz is not impairing his inheritance, right? So he says, the day that you get the field, you also get Ruth the Moabitess. The Redeemer said, I can't redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption for yourself, for I can't redeem it. Now, this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging to confirm a transaction. This is funny. The one drew off his sandal and gave it to the other, and this was the manner of attesting in Israel. So when the Redeemer said to Boaz, buy it for yourself, he drew off his sandal. All right. This is where it's funny. So the parallel text to this, not a parallel text, but where this originates is Deuteronomy 25, 5 through 10. And here's what's supposed to happen. The widow woman who is sitting at the city gate, who's saying, look, I need you to redeem me. If the nearest kinsman would not redeem the woman, she would take his sandal off of his foot, spit in his face, and because he's supposed to continue the line of his ancestor, or not his ancestor, his kinsman, and she would take the sandal off of his foot, spit in his face, and from that point forward, he would be called the house of the one whose sandal has been pulled off. It was like an insult. So here you are, you're the kinsman, and the widow comes to you and says, redeem me, my husband died, and you're the closest kinsman. And he goes, no, I'm not going to redeem you. And so they would remove the sandal, spit in the guy's face, and then his moniker from that point forward would be, oh, you know that guy, the one of the house whose sandal has been pulled off. And so this pulling off of the sandal is we don't know the other redeemer's name, is the guy going, I refuse to be the redeemer. And it was a dishonor. And so Boaz takes the redemption and he says, I've purchased this land and I take as my wife Ruth the Moabitess. And so verse 13, it was kind of just a mocking thing. So the other guy, the guy that passed on Ruth in the land, is now going to be known as the house of the one whose sandal has been pulled off, which is way too many words for a good, clever insult, but golly, it's got a sting as he's walking through. Oh, there's the guy, the one who, he's of the house whose sandal has been pulled off, it's just funny. And Boaz has the sandal to prove it. Like, that's funny to me. So 4:13 says this, so Boaz took Ruth, she became his wife, and he went into her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. And the women said to Naomi, blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a redeemer. May his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher in your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more valuable to you than 7 sons, has given birth to a child. And then Naomi took the child and lay him in her lap and became his nurse. And the women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, a son has been born to Naomi. And they named him Obed. And he was the father of Jesse, the father of David. We talked about that a couple of days ago. Now, these are the generations of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Aminadab. Aminadab fathered Nahshon. Nahshon fathered Salmon. Salmon is the one who married Rahab. We see that in Matthew chapter 1. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. And Jesse fathered David. So Ruth is the great-great-grandmother of King David. And that kind of gives us our timeline. So this is getting closer to the end of those 350 years of the book of Judges. And so join me tomorrow in Judges 9, and we'll pick up there. See you then. Thank you so much for journeying with us today at Simpler Bible. Together, you and I have looked at another passage of Scripture and come to know the Bible a little bit better and enjoy God more fully. This video, along with all of our videos, can be found at simplerbible.com, where you can enjoy our Through the Bible in a Year course. You can also enjoy a wealth of resources, blog posts that take you a little bit deeper into the text, a Bible study format that you can use with your small groups or your family, and we're creating new content all the time, all with the commitment to help us be people who know and enjoy God more fully. Thank you so much for being part of it, and we can't wait to see you next time.